Welcome back to another episode of One Room Schoolhouse. Today, we are highlighting a hero who is one of the more unique heroes we will talk about over this series of American heroes, and it's Mary Fields, also known as Stagecoach Mary Fields. And Danielle, this is someone that off camera, you've been very excited about.
Right.
I mean, kind of like, Danielle, it's cool. You're going to get a moment to talk. And you're like, no, I want to tell the whole story. And we're like, Elijah and I want to tell a story too. Like, you are super excited about this.
Well, no pressure on telling the story and giving it justice that it deserves. But she is a very cool woman. And so the title that we have on it is that she's the first Black female U.S. postal carrier, which does not significantly give her justice because she was so much more than that. She embodied the American Old West qualities of hard work, toughness, and faith. And we'll definitely get into it. So she was born into slavery in Tennessee, and so she was brought into slavery by a pro-slavery Unionist Democrat. He was Judge Edmund Dunn, and so he was a politician, and his endeavors took him coast to coast. So after slavery ended, Mary chose to stay with the Dunn family. And so when the judge's wife died, they actually had 5 children. And Mary took it upon herself to take those 5 children to Ohio, where the judge's sister was. And she was a nun. And her name was Mother Amadeus.
Now, this is also kind of interesting to me, that when your sister as a nun, and actually she was a mother, so she was over like a convent. Right. She was kind of a big deal. And at this point, Mary, Stagecoach Mary, because it was also Mary Amadeus, so there's some Marys in here. Yeah. But Stagecoach Mary is going to take them to Mother Amadeus. And when she gets them to Mother Amadeus, there's some kind of connection that Mary's like, I really like her.
Yes. Yeah, maybe it was God working through.
Right.
So the following year, Mother Amadeus was actually sent to start a convent in Cascade, Montana, which was the wilderness. It was cold. I don't know if you've ever been to Montana, but it is not for the weak.
Now, Montana is one of the more beautiful places in the U.S., yes. Right? Big sky country. It's amazing. The winters as a Texan, right? Arizona, right? Like, okay. What, like these negative degrees and like this white stuff that piles up feet high, like what in the world? This is not, as you mentioned, for the faint of heart. Like you gotta be pretty tough to navigate this. And Mother Amadeus has chosen to go start this convent for girls because there was a school for boys out there, and really the idea was they wanted to make sure that these native children were not just getting an education, but learning about Jesus and learning to read and write. Elijah, we've talked about already in some of the earlier episodes how education can set you up for success on so many levels. And they recognize if we can help these native children have an education where they can read, they can write, they can broaden their horizons, it could be really beneficial for them in the future.
Exactly. And, that reminds me of what George Washington said about the Native Americans when he was coming into power at the conclusion of the Revolutionary War, where he said that you would do good learning the religion of Jesus Christ. And what was the mission of that convent? The convent was to bring education, but also knowledge of Jesus Christ to those Native Americans.
So, Cascade, Montana.
Right. So Mother Amadeus is there, and Mary Fields isn't there yet. Mother Amadeus actually ends up getting deathly ill, and Mary Fields has such a caring heart that she goes to Montana to take care of her and nurse her back to health, right? So she falls in love with the women and the girls there, and we're going to see this later on in her story, how she just feels responsible for them. So she gets there and she takes charge of the construction efforts there.
Let's also clarify. For her to take charge, obviously it's a big deal. Imagine a woman showing up on a construction site today.
Well, she was a big woman.
Well,
all right, let's get into that. Let's get into that.
How in the world are men going to listen to this woman bossing them around? Well, because this is the era where men are about 5 feet 8 inches.
And she was 6 foot, 200 pounds.
Okay, stop, pause. Not only was she taller than virtually all the men, she was significantly larger. So not just like a tall, skinny woman. This is a tall, broad woman. Like, don't cross her. And not only like was she physical stature
No,
big.
she was hard. She
Yeah.
drank whiskey. She openly cussed. She
We do
went
not
to the
condone
saloons.
that.
No, of course not.
We're not promoting that.
She was quick-tempered. She was capable of fist fights. She carried a rifle and
Now-
a revolver and was. Do you want me to
Let
continue?
me pause.
This
so
girl.
not only capable of fistfights, capable in fistfights against men. As you mentioned, she carried guns. Right. Not only did she carry guns, she actually got kicked out of the convent for having a gunfight against one of the male workers who was supposed to be doing construction. She's like, you're wrong. And we can only imagine, right, how this argument happened. And they're going back and forth. She's like, shut your mouth. You shut your mouth. She's like drawing the gun.
I do want to say she wasn't just showing up and bossing people around. She also took charge of this construction site by hauling freight. So that she's really like the first long haul truck driver, right? So that's near to my heart because my mom's a truck driver.
So this is somebody, okay, big picture Mary Fields. She's not somebody that you're gonna push around. And when we talk about Montana's not for the faint of heart, this girl was not faint of heart or faint of anything else. She's big, she's tough, she's strong. But as you mentioned, she had a really caring and soft side.
She was also the babysitter, and she did the laundry, and she took care of the chickens, and she loved these women and girls.
I mean, really, she's the person that you want on your team because if you need help, she's going to help you. But if somebody comes to threaten you, she's going to throw down and deal with the threat. And this is not even, right, the whole story. There's still a lot left of what she did and contributed.
So
a lot more to her story.
There is a lot more to that story. And, you know, she eventually had to leave the convent, and unfortunately she left because she got into a scuffle with a construction worker. But while she was gone, Mother Amadeus wanted to set her up for success and actually helped her open a restaurant. And while that restaurant wasn't super successful, it was because of her caring heart that she would provide meals to people regardless of their ability to pay or not. Even though some of those ventures didn't really work out in the end, she still felt a strong connection and a strong desire to take care of the children and the nuns that were at that convent. And so she decided to sign up and apply to be the postal worker working the route, 14-mile route to Cascade, Montana.
She didn't just sign up. She outperformed every other man that tried every other person who is probably all men, right? And so and again, this is a rugged route. It's 14 miles. Right. So every single day.
And 14 miles might not seem like a lot for us today. I mean, you know, there's people that you're thinking, okay, that's a half marathon, right? Like we can jog and run that. Yes, we're talking about generally paved roads, or right, you might run cross country and you're like, hey, I've gone off-roading before. Remember, this is Montana, and we're talking about for months, 4, 5, sometimes 6 months of the year, there could be snow in some of these places or the passes you're having to go across. But back up. The reason she did this is she wanted to still have a connection. She wanted to be there. This is the best way to have a connection, so I'm going to do whatever it takes. So they have a contest to see who will be the best qualified to do this. She outperforms the men. Mm-hmm. She's chosen. So she had a mule named Moses, and this was her preferred method of mail delivery, even though she totally qualified to deliver on an entire team. She could put them together, hitch them, drive them, but she preferred Moses. And the problem was that there were times the snow was so high that her mule couldn't make it very well. So not to fail the sisters or the kids of this convent, she got snowshoes. And she made this trip on snowshoes. And there was even reports at times that she would have to fight off wolves as wolves would come because, right, she's out there by herself, and so she'd have to defend herself against wolves and maybe survive some nights in the snow. Like, this is a huge deal.
Mary Fields delivered mail to Cascade and never missed a single delivery, which is how she earned the nickname Stagecoach, because back then they would use the Stagecoach to do regional mail deliveries across the entire United States. And because of her reliability...
Is there any other thing that does like regional mail deliveries?
Do you think Amazon was influenced by Stagecoach Mary Fields?
We'll
just leave
from now on, except when Amazon fails to get me my package, then I'm like, you're not as good as Stagecoach. I want Mary, bring her back.
You know, and while that's definitely possible, I would say the moral of this story is even though she grew up in a very rough nature, right, where she exuded a lot of brawn and bravery, that didn't jade her to the love and kindness and fidelity to those nuns and children that she left at that convent. And I think we can take something from that even though you are faced with adversity, that shouldn't jade you to have love and goodness towards others.
Right, and she stayed reliable. She retired when she was 71 years old. So she made that route every single day until she was 71 years old. And the town where she was delivering mail to, they celebrated her birthday every single year. The kids were let out of school, and she...
Yeah. You know the kids had to love her when they get out of school on her birthday. The town actually made a unique allowance that women weren't allowed to go in saloons, but they're like, Mary, you get a pass. You can go to the saloon. What's also cool about the very end of her story is you see the influence that Mother Amadeus, the other nuns, had on her, because later in her life, she does convert to Christianity. There's a really neat story about the softening of her heart, where she always had a heart for the children, for the nuns, but you really see her heart coming to God at the end. She's somebody that very famous historically, easy to document, and somebody that really should be celebrated for part of what she did, her contributions to America. Again, as always, to find out more, you can go to wallbuilders.com. Way more to the story than we're able to give and share in this brief time. But at wallbuilders.com, you can find out a lot more information. And as always, just tune in next time to the next episode of One Room Schoolhouse.